toward the One, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the messenger, the spirit of guidance. Welcome everyone. This is the sixth and final class in the series on the Gabrielite Work, a relational approach to spirituality. And tonight we're going to be talking about new creation and the Imaginal Faculty. And as I hope you've begun to get a feeling for throughout all these Gabrielite mysteries, and there's 12 altogether, these are the final two we're going to discuss tonight. But each one of these mysteries is really related to all of the other mysteries. They're just different ways of approaching what we're trying to communicate that is a non-linear way of understanding and experiencing both of ourselves and our relationship to the true reality of our being and the reality that we actually exist in, even though many of the aspects of that reality remain dormant or latent until we develop the capacity for them. So let's talk about new creation. We'll start with the physicists. Physicists say that time is not continuous. We think of time like just moving on continuously, like a clock. But in actuality, there's a smallest unit of time. It's called the Planck unit of time. It's an unimaginably short period of time, but anything less than that is not meaningful to talk about. And so instead of it being continuous, there's like one instant, like the Sufis talk about, there's one instant of time, then there's the next instant, and so on. But in some ways, it's like our experience when we go to a movie theater. When we see a movie, we don't experience it as one frame, the next frame, the next frame, because it's being broadcast at a high rate of speed, perhaps even 120 frames per second. And our visual system can't break that down into little pieces. It seems to be continuous to us. So in the same way, we experience our world as being continuous in time. And we also experience what's going to happen in the next moment of time, excuse me, as logically just being a little bit more of what's been there in the previous moment of time. We don't expect any miraculous differences from moment to moment. And even if something different were to occur, we may not even be able to perceive it. And perhaps some of you watched this video that was put out some years ago by, I don't remember what university. And the instructions were, when you watch this video, there were two groups of basketball players. Some of them had white shirts, some of them had black shirts. And your job for 1 minute was to count how many times the ball was bounced. The ones in white shirts were bouncing it to the other players. And you watch this and then say, well, how many times did you count? And pretty easy task. And then the instructions were, well, watch it again, but see if you notice anything you didn't see the first time. And I must say, I didn't notice this the first time, and most people don't. The whole time they're bouncing this ball, there's a man in a gorilla suit going back and forth in the background, beating on his chest. And it makes you feel quite humble, like, how could I not see that? Well, we don't expect to see a man in a gorilla suit on a basketball court. And so there's a part of our brain that filters out input, because if we were totally aware of all the input coming in, we wouldn't be able to cross the street. We'd be overwhelmed. So it filters out what our brain deems to be unimportant or not worthy of being noticed. Well, that's kind of a trivial example for just physical reality. But the Sufis talk about that there is a new creation born at every instant. And even Arby says what's created in that new creation is similar to what's been there before, but it's never the same. It's always something fresh. Our tendency, however, is to just project forward a continuation of what's been before and to not even realize that there's something new that could be emerging or that there's new possibilities that could take place. And so we keep ourselves stuck. I've quoted this Sufi many times in the 12th century, I think. He said, oh man, if you but knew you're free, it's your thought of captivity that keeps you in chains. So if I was going to make a modern version, I'd say, he'd say something like, oh man, oh woman, your anticipation that what you perceive is not changing from moment to moment, but just a little bit more of the same thing. And that's what keeps you from experiencing the freedom of your soul.
So I'll put in a little here. First of all, we did speak about time last time, and hopefully some of you use the opportunity of slicing through with the blade and allowing something new to emerge within your experience. I know I talked to one or two of you and you did. But that is an opportunity that we have. And also, I wanted to say we'll be speaking about the Imaginal Faculty a little bit later, but here we already are speaking about it, because you can imagine or hold in your mind the idea that there is a possibility to keep going back and refreshing all the time, that everything can be refreshed. Depending on our illumination, depending on our way of relating to everything, that we have a hand in every moment, moment by moment. And so that's what he's introducing to us here, this wonderful opportunity we always have.
So speaking of refresh, if you've ever gotten onto a website and then done some other stuff and then gone back to it, more than likely it's going to be exactly the same as it was before, unless you hit that little refresh button up at the top. And if you do that, let's say it's cnn.com, if you don't hit that refresh button, unless it's a site that automatically refreshes itself, you're going to get the same information that was there before, and you're going to be thinking, and that's really what's current, but it's old news. Well, in the same way, when we don't allow ourselves to hit that refresh button in our consciousness, we're experiencing a rerun of what's been extrapolated into a projection of what we think is going to logically come after that. We don't think that we're doing this. Of course not. That's just the way it is. We are so ingrained in our assumptions that the world is the way that we think it is and the way that we perceive it is through our physical senses. The question seldom arises that there could be anything else going on than the way that that is. Well, we talk about spirituality as a process of awakening. So this is one big awakening, awakening from that conditioned modality of perception that really keeps us limited.
I'll put one little thing here. So back to imagination now. I've told you guys before, and this is, I really believe this, that the most constant use of the imagination in most people is to imagine exactly the same thing over and over again, or something similar to it, and not allowing anything really to break in. So that's definitely a challenge for us to take a look at that. How can we challenge that imagination, open up wider than we ever have before, and think of the potentialities that Azarbash speaks about all the time, that when subtle and the manifest are interfaced together, then the opportunity exists for much more possibilities than ever before.
So this is a good point that Ravani Rahat is making, that we are using our imagination, but not in a helpful way. It's the usual condition of just extrapolating forward. And the problem is we don't think of that as imagination. We think of it, of course, that's the real world. What else could there be? And so that is a limitation. It's very hard to free ourselves from. And Hazrat Khan has a beautiful saying about what he calls the message. The message is a call to awakening for souls that are stirring in their sleep, but it's also a lullaby for those that need to sleep some more. So if you've ever had the experience of trying to convince someone of some spiritual idea, and they're not really interested and they're not receptive to it, they're not going to be able to understand what you're saying, and they'll probably think that you're just kind of somewhat up in the sky somewhere and not really grounded. Okay, so let's talk about, well, what are some benefits about realizing that there's this new creation going on at every moment? Well, as Ravani Ram mentioned last time, we talked about time, and we talked about the instant of time that pierces through the arrow of time that opens up new possibilities. And she referred to what we talked about before, the phenomena of when subtle energy is linked to ordinary reality, it opens up new possibilities. So there's always at every instant an opportunity for new possibilities that weren't there before. Well, what are some of these possibilities? Well, one of them is that we are, to different degrees, limited or stuck in our conditioning from the past. What does this mean? Old patterns of behavior, old patterns of emotion, old patterns of thinking, and even old patterns of the way we perceive things, not being able to see things in a fresh light. If you recall, when we had the session on fractals, I led a meditation where I had you imagine that rather than the fractal being just this fixed thing, like an image of a fractal on a computer screen, it was actually a pattern of the way energy flows between different aspects of ourself in relationship to everything else, because we are interconnected with everything else. And so we did a meditation on imagining that there were some energy knots, so to speak, in the fractal of our being, and they weren't just in one location. These were repetitive patterns that may have happened over the course of years in our life, and over the course of different kinds of situations at any one given time, and so on. And so we did a meditation of allowing those knots to open up and allowing that energy to circulate. So if we realize that there is a new creation at every instant, then there's always the possibility of enabling the circulation to take place that had been stuck before. And that's going to free things, not just in what seems to be the present to us, but in the aspects of our being that are in the past, and even what seems to be in the future, and even in our connections with more subtle levels of our being. So there's always this tremendous opportunity to make a breakthrough in our awakening.
Okay, go on.
Okay. So think about that for just a moment. Just think about some stuck pattern that you maybe have been dealing with. And I mentioned last time, sometimes we think about this, well, that's our karma, or in yoga, it's our samskara. It's kind of the clustered leftovers of all this stuff, and we just have to burn it or work through it. Well, you can think of it that way, and then you might think, well, I wonder how many lifetimes it'll take to do that. Or at any instant, we can become free from that. So just try that thought on for size. In this next instant, you can release the hold of all that past conditioning. And the only reason there was a hold of that on you is you identified with that as yourself. This is me, and I am someone who, and you fill in the blank with every one of these stuck patterns, old patterns that you've had. That's the way I am. Yeah, I know I need to work on this and that, but you're identified with this, and there's probably no end to that. And as we've talked about through this whole series, and those of you who have been in on our previous series, we're talking about a relational nature of our being and a relational nature of reality, and that spirituality is a process of deepening, transforming, and evolving our relationship between our human and divine, or human and transcendent aspects. So rather than thinking, well, I wonder how many years it's going to take to fix up the human side of ourselves before we can get to the place where maybe we can have something that'll trickle down from the other side of things. Instead of that, how can we just plug into this deeper reality of our being and allow this circulation to be restored in our being that enables not only transformation to take place in us, but enables us to chart our course in the new reality that is available at every instant. So another way of thinking about that is we have the ability not to be like a leaf in the wind in the new creation. Well, this is whatever way circumstances are going to make me go, but we can consciously navigate our way through not something that's fixed. It's not just, well, it's already sitting there. No, here's another link with the mysteries. We talked about the path is always unfolding, and we talked about it's not sitting there. We're making it as we go along. So how do we want to further what's unfolding in our being?
Well, I'd like to link it back to another mystery also, and that mystery is desire. So that we know that we can fulfill a desire that we bring into our imaginal realm, as we're talking, but unfortunately, the desire that is based on us as a separated being is going to be very different than the desire that we have when we, as Azarbash was just saying, realize the relational what relational unity is, that we relational nature of everything. In other words, that there's a circulation through everything. It's kind of like being in a river, and imagine the incredible pressure of this river flowing down, that we would have all the energy of this huge river, and we get a river connecting us through time to other times. We have a river connecting us to the divine and all that is in the world of the divine. We have a river that connects us to beings that have gone on. We think, oh no, we're separated from that. No, that river connects us. There's a river in all these different kinds of ways. So there's all this connection that is there. So it is not separated. This is the total antithesis of being separated. It is totally interconnected in every kind of way. So that any desire that comes from us feeling that is more of a desire to share what it is that we have, to bless, to think of just beauty and all the different qualities that these other beings can realize. So our desires are so different depending on how we think, and that our new creation, the way that we can create, will come from how we think. Are we separated being? Are we going to work and believe and know that we can get to this place of relational unity and have those incredible forces working with us?
So this idea of streams, in a way, we could think of those streams that Ravanirad noted in all different directions as the circulatory system of our soul. It's the way our soul is in relationship, in a living dynamic relationship with things within time, outside of time, between the transcendent and the manifest, between the present and the past, between the present and the future, between the future and the past, every which way that you want, that is our circulatory system of our soul. And then we can think that is a part of, on the cosmic level, the circulatory system of the divine being in manifestation. The divine being lives through us and through everything in manifestation through the modality of relationship that's been established with what's in manifestation. Well, what is it that goes through this circulatory system? Light, the qualities, the wisdom that's gained by the experiences that go back to the divine, the taking of that desire that began with the divine impulse and transforming it through our experience, and then participating in what we call the human divine co-creative process. So again, we've talked, and you see how all these different things tie together. We've talked about the allegory of the soul, and we've talked about the importance of us having metaphors along the way so we can make a scaffolding, so to speak, a framework that enables us to translate experiences from very subtle realms so they remain living in our functioning in the world, and they're not just this evanescent, oh wow, that was wonderful, and I don't know anything about that. It seems to have disappeared. It can become very grounded. I saw a wonderful picture, and you may want to Google this if you didn't see it. There was a weather phenomenon that goes with the Arctic blasts, especially in the northern states, that makes for pillars of light in the sky. And the scientific explanation, if there is a light source like a light pole, that the light that's coming from that pole refracts on the light crystals, but it looks like something out of a science fiction movie. There's these gorgeous columns of light. And I saw one picture where there were just multiple shafts of light coming from above down into the world. Well, what a beautiful image for the connection between the subtle realms and manifest reality. Mm. So it's important for us to establish images and metaphors that, and there's many ones that have been given, and if those work for you, wonderful. And it's also wonderful to discover our own that give us a sense of meaningfulness that help us navigate along in our journey. Mm-hmm. Okay, so here's some thoughts to try on for size. Okay, the first we've said, there's a new creation born at every instant. The next one is, every breath that you take is a fresh dispensation from the divine. And every time you exhale, it's your offering or your gift back to the divine about the way that light that's been conveyed on the breath has been transformed through the uniqueness of your very being. And it's not just returned upwards to, we might think the divine is up there. No, it is also becomes available outwards, and what the Sufis say is the cosmic direction or cosmic dimension becomes available to everything. So you can imagine the pillar of light, but then you can also imagine this just all-pervading light that is enabled every breath that you take. So imagine that. Just take a breath. This is a brand new dispensation from the divine being that's different from the last one because the divine being has been changed by everything that happened in the last instant. So there's never been a breath like this. Feel that light coming in, very fresh light. And as you breathe out, feel what is given from your being back. And then the next breath. Now we can make this even juicier. Okay, you can keep that thought going, but now each time you take a breath in, you're not only bringing in the fresh dispensation that's come from the source of all existence, but you're breathing in the fresh dispensation that's been brought about by everything else in existence that's contributed on the last breath. All that is now available to you. So it's like, it's as if it's coming in from everywhere, and it's also, not literally, but metaphorically descending into you. So feel that this is just coming from every possible dimension of direction into your being as you inhale this light. See what happens just with that thought. I think you'll feel something. And as you exhale, feel what you're contributing to this cosmic symphony of light everywhere, all times, all dimensions, not just in the physical realm. So you're partaking with each breath of the light from the angelic realm, the light from the realm of pure spirit, the light from the realm of archetypes, the light from the realm of just mystery beyond any words, pure splendor. Pir Vilayat would say that's the most subtle realm we can say anything about. All of that. There's this never-ending interchange that's always new every time you take a breath. What could be simpler, but what could be more amazing? And as you continue breathing, which I'm sure you'll be doing through the rest of this class, and hopefully through the rest of your days, think about this. Whenever you're in a situation and you're caught up in whatever it is, remember what we're taking for assumptions. There's always this fresh dispensation. There's this new creation. And here is the opportunity for you to open something up in existence, to free a knot, not just in, the knot in the energy patterns of your own being, but we could say it's a knot in relational patterns of existence that happen to be manifest in you're participating in this particular situation, and now you are allowing this fresh dispensation to come in with each breath. You're allowing yourself to also experience the light of a particular divine quality, which is exactly what's called for in this situation, to become present to you and to be present in that situation. And you're seeing that now we've talked about the link of the subtle and the manifest. This has opened up new possibilities, but in this case, it's in a particular way. It's by virtue of this particular divine quality that now it's opened up. I talked a while ago about navigating in the new creation, a way of navigating through what seemed to be an impasse, but actually becomes an opening into something that brings about freedom. So just imagine that. Not by willpower, it won't work. Just allow it.
I love that we had an opportunity here, and I noticed you didn't close your eyes and I didn't close my eyes, that we could do during the day, during conversations with other people, during work of some kind, and allowing these processes to continue. And it's a different kind of focusing, which really leads right into the idea of the imaginal faculty, that we can make a choice, many choices. Again, that we are free. It is a new creation. We can make a decision and rely upon that possibility. That is one we can call upon. Also, I like the way that you were saying that we don't have to force anything, that we just know that it's there. This has to do also with us not being able to see everything that's going on, not being able to think everything that's going on. If we're limiting what we're doing to what we can think about right now, that's not going to include all these other levels at which that we are. That's the one thing that we get tripped up on. We think we have to be thinking about it and directing it, but he's saying we can allow it. So there's an opening on the part of this being and manifestation for what we are linked up with naturally, supernaturally, in the higher realms, and we're allowing this to come through. It's also part of relational unity, because this wouldn't be happening if there wasn't this relation between the manifest, the being above or within manifestation, transcendent. But we're saying, I allow this process, and there's an incredible presence that comes through as we say that. So we'll continue now about the Imaginal Faculty. Happily, even though there's half an hour to talk about it right now, we're about to have 6 weeks worth of talking about the Imaginal Faculty. So I think there'll be some treats that you'll get right now in anticipation of what else will come. So here we go. First, even though we say imaginal, we don't mean fantasy. It's more like seeing things in a new light, seeing a new image, or holding it in our minds in a different kind of way, which will change things. We can speak about beings or things in manifestation that we see differently. This is according to that word we knew as tawil, to see beyond, or to see what transpires beyond or behind what appears. So we see new meaningfulness that wasn't apparent before, just in the way that we see things. Some people have defined the imagination as the divine in humanity. That itself, that imagination, is the divine. It is something that changes everything. And it is something that is within our realm to use. So we call it an element of the Barzakh also. Remember that Barzakh is the meeting place between the divine and the manifest. It is an element that is really so great it is beyond what we can see, but we can use it. So we talked about increasing meaningfulness. Also, we modulate our consciousness. We transform our consciousness by use of the imagination or the imaginal faculty. That's like everything that we do in the spiritual realm. But it must be trained. Let's speak of that a little bit here. We can go down to a very basic level of training. In spiritual practices, we use it just to hold an image. As we talk about concentration, to concentrate on something, to think of something in our minds. And then we can imagine an example or a being that exemplifies a quality. Let's say that we're talking about the quality of compassion. So now we can think about a being of compassion, or someone even in our own lives that was very compassionate. And then we can imagine how we will change when we manifest that quality. So we're using our imagination to help us to find a path through and to welcome this quality in different ways. Well, also, getting a little bit farther down the road, we can help to bring about transformation in our ways of dealing with different situations. Sometimes I think about my work as a counselor, and other people have worked with conflict resolution. Psychologists that we have here, one sitting next to me, has helped people to deal with difficult situations in their lives. In this way, new possibilities are opened up, sometimes by the help of a counselor. And then we can allow these transformations, like we were talking about new creation. We can welcome new creation into that relationship and know that it can be a different way. I even know some beings that I'm looking at on the screen here that have helped me and others in regard to relationships between husband and wife. So here's another way of kind of reanalyzing, reconfiguring our reality in terms of our own relationships. in this regard too, excuse me for a minute. Our imaginal faculty helps us to distill wisdom from life's experiences. What did we learn from going through that? Is this something we're going to keep repeating even though it didn't have a very good result? Maybe this is the time that we can use our imaginal faculty to say, well, I can do something different than that. What could I do different than that? Maybe getting support from somebody. So rather than reacting, becoming self-conscious, assigning blame, collecting accolades. Oh, I did this right. Oh, good, good. So we can look at things from a higher perspective and transform. That's all imaginal faculty. And when we get into other, let's say now we're seeing it from a little bit more of a relational unity point of view. So that we're not just seeing things from us against the world and trying to make things turn out well for us. The next level up may be engaging in imagery in relationships. How do we reunite with those that we might have perceived as other than ourselves? Well, all the religions are about this. How can we relate to the divine? Well, and beautiful example in Christianity, I and my Father are one. We have Jesus speaking about that. We have Pir Zia challenging us to what we call these marriages of looking at, let's say, our dream body and our own body, our material body, I should say, and somehow creating an imagery that has to do with saying these really are one, having them do a practice together. You have learned the practice that we do between the imaginal self and the manifest self. There are the ways to relate through Zoroastrianism, Sventa Almighty being our mother. And in that transformation, finding that part of ourselves that is unique and will stand in manifestation, will be on the front lines, opening to the divine, to be coming through, and then in concert, becoming that one who is full of possibilities and will bring something that has never been before. These are ways that we can use that imaginal faculty to develop relationships that are just going to transform everything. Come in.
So these are all really good examples of ways we can use this faculty to help us shift from a state of limitation and separation into a state of relationship. And we've talked throughout this series of classes and previous series about relational unity, which is a way of connecting with, could be another person, could be experience in the inner realm, whatever we're experiencing, in which we still have very much a sense of identity, but there's a real permeability and a circulation of light between ourselves and whatever it is that we are experiencing. And the Sufis say that whenever there's two presences that come together, a third presence arises. So this, we talked about how physical reality has changed when subtle energy comes into it. What happens when two beings come together in relational unity, that light that emerges from that now opens the doorways to new wisdom and insights to come through as a result of the combination of those two beings that would never come through from either being separate. So this is another way of bringing something into a new creation that we actually made possible by the way that we got into relationship with, let's say, with the other person. So what are some hints or clues about this? Well, one is becoming aware when we're not in this state. That's easy. When we notice, things are terrible, I can't relate to this person, and, all these things are happening, and, we get into inner gripe mode, maybe for seemingly good reason or whatever, but that doesn't seem to get us very far. And we can shift out of that when we can find a way of what I've talked about before, that everything is a potential portal to the sacred. How can I, in the midst of this place that I'm stuck, enable something to break through? Well, it will never happen until I come into a different way of relating to it, a different state of relationship with what I'm experiencing. So that's one way. Another way, we've talked about tawil, harmonic perception. We start experiencing something and we feel separated, but then we open to discovering the deeper reality of what we're connecting with, and something opens up, which is great. But more wonderful than even what we get from that is the fact that that couldn't take place unless we had opened up to a deeper aspect of our own being that is in the same world as the deeper reality of what we're experiencing. And now we're perceiving the natural state of the way that things are, as opposed to what we could call the constricted or truncated state that we had been in before. So we've got all these muscles, so to speak, we can exercise with our imagination. And many times we find ourselves using these muscles to dig ourselves in deeper. But as soon as we realize we're doing that, we go, no, that's not going to do the trick. And we go, what can I do differently? Take a breath. Remember, zikr means remembrance. Remember the nature of who I am, not who I was, who I am, the nature of my being. Remember the nature of this reality that I'm in. How can I find a way of connecting with something in this deeper reality that's going to create, I'm just thinking of this terminology now, kind of like a wormhole that opens up into a much richer space. And there's so many ways that that can happen. And sometimes it's spontaneous through just some music that happens to come on, or something a child says, or something we flip a book open to that just breaks us out of that place that we have been stuck. But there's always an escape clause, it seems like, from where we're stuck. One way of thinking of it, it's an escape clause. The other way, it's like an open door to much richer freedom.
Beautiful. And there are so many opportunities too that we have through our spiritual background, our religious backgrounds. Speaking one more time about Christianity, and I and the Father are one, and this whole idea that you are intimately related to the one who is everything. I mean, this one is just overwhelmingly beautiful, that we're learning more about our multidimensionality, that there are all these other realms, and there's great resonance of all of this. But at the same time, we have that one who is our unique beloved, that is just right next to us. Well, here's one right here in manifestation, but we're even speaking about that one who is the personal Lord, as we speak of in Islam, that is there listening to every beat of your heart, that cherishes you so deeply. That intimacy that we're speaking about. And often this kind of relationship, which also could be felt as someone who sees you in your uniqueness, that sees you and is so thankful for you and appreciative of you. And now it's not even from a personal, a being that is limited. This is coming from a being who knows everything about you, every breath that you've taken. So it's this amazing Zen koan that one who is everything can possibly, after knowing everything about you, just be so amazed by you and so thankful to what you do in life. It's phenomenal. Mm-hmm.
So I've mentioned before this little song that you may be familiar with that goes, "Oh, my soul, it magnifies the Lord and delights in his name." So because this is the Gabrielite work and it's relational spirituality, we could add another way of saying this verse from the divine point of view. "Oh, my soul, it magnifies the Lord who delights in his name." And even Arby says that each of us is a unique name of God. So it's like God is delighting in his name. Who is his name? You. You are the divine's means of experiencing something that the divine could never know except through any other being in all of creation that the divine does not already know about. It's the divine is sometimes Pir Vilayat would say is, I don't remember what the adjective was, but it's kind of like astounded by the mysteries of what's unfolding, because it's always unfolding. It's never known before, but the divine is continually knowing in each instant what is made possible by your being. And to the extent that we can become capable of participating in that, and we'll be talking a lot more in the upcoming series with the Imaginal Faculty, how we go about doing that, then so much more is able to come through that both we're able to experience from our side of things, but the divine is able to experience from the divine's side of things. And both of these sides are part of the unity of who we are. It's very challenging to experience all of that at the same time. So we toggle, as Pir Vilayat would say, from one side and the other side, but we can get to the point of experiencing a unitive sense of identity.
So that brings us to a practice. We're going to say 2 words, divine words. The verse is Ya Shakur, which is thankfulness, gratitude. That's Shakur, and it's pronounced Shakur, Ya Shakur. So said by itself, you could just think of being grateful. We are especially now thinking about being so grateful for that one, that divine one who loves us so. But also, I would like you to think of that divine one, the point of view of the divine that is so thankful for you. That's mainly the point of view that I would like you to focus on. Ya Shakur, and you're thinking from the divine point of view, being thankful for you. And the other one is Ya Shahid, Shahid. That means the witness. So this is God witnessing you and feeling so thankful for you. Other things may happen in the midst of this. You might be thankful for the divine perceiving, witnessing you. So it might be kind of going in a loop as you do this. That's fine, but just begin with the point of view of the divine, being thankful for you. So we're going to say it, I'll time us and we'll do 33. But after that, when we do the breathing part of it, it'll be saying, as we breathe in, we're thinking Shahid, which means being witnessed. As we exhale, we're thinking gratitude. And this time we can feel the gratitude. So again, as we inhale, we think Shahid. As we exhale, Shakur. And then at the very end, we'll just be thinking of the beauty of both of these reflecting upon each other with thankfulness and witnessing. So let us begin. I will say it a few times, and then I'll ask you to join in. Ya Shakur, Ya Shahid, Ya Shakur, Ya Shahid, Ya Shakur, Ya Shahid. Join me now. Ya Shakur, Ya Shahid, 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 Ya Shakur, Ya Shahid. Let's pause here. Now you can also think of it the other way around so that you're feeling the thankfulness for the witness. Ya Shakur, Ya Shahid, 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 Ya Shakur, Ya Shahid. One more. Ya Shakur, Ya Shahid. Now as you inhale, you're thinking Shahid. And as you exhale, you think Shakur. So you're inhaling the witness, exhaling thankfulness. Now we'll stop thinking about the words and just thinking the essence of the practice. This might be a blessing for you to always be able to begin that feeling of being in this resonant relationship just through this thankfulness of the witness. God is watching and loving you so. There's great thankfulness. So dwell in this feeling for a while. Oh, me. Okay.